Welcome to this webinar, Becoming a Financially Informed NHS Practitioner, brought to you by SBK Healthcare and in collaboration with the Money and Pensions Service. To find out more about our online courses, forums, conferences and webinars, please do visit the SBK website at www.sbk-healthcare.co.uk.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that lovely warm welcome, and also to SBK for inviting me back. This is the second time I've been invited to give a presentation. But most of all, thank you to all of you for taking time out of your day to join this webinar. I guess it shows that a number of you are really interested in this topic, which is fantastic. So as Vanessa said, I'm Sarah Murphy, and I work for the Money and Pensions Service. And what we're going to cover today is a little bit about the links between money and health. We're going to talk about what a financially informed practitioner is, and also importantly, what it isn't. We're going to touch on some of the barriers, perhaps, that you may feel or face when you're working in a healthcare setting in relation to asking about money. And then we're going to share, what the most important bit of today really is sharing some training, some tools, some resources, some tips as to how you can then hopefully become a confident and financially informed practitioner. But first off, I'll just explain a little bit about who I am and who we are, and why we are talking to you today, why we're interested in this particular topic. So if we can move on to the next slide, that would be great, thank you. So Money and Pension Service, we are an arm's length body of the government, the UK government. And similar, I guess, in England, NHS England, an arm's length body of the Department of Health and Social Care. We are an arm's length body of the DWP. And we've been set up in law. So we were set up by the Financial Guidance and Claims Act. And ultimately what we're here to do is to make sure that everyone across the UK, and I think I just saw a question in the chat about are things relevant for colleagues in Scotland? Absolutely, we're here for everybody across the UK. So we're set up to help improve the financial well-being of everyone. And we've got five core functions. One of them is to provide money guidance, and we also have a function around providing pensions guidance. And we do that via a service that we call Money Helper, which is available both online, over the phone, web chat, etc. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that service can offer in a moment. And again, that service is for people across the UK. We also have a function around debt advice. That is just in England, because in the nations it's a devolved matter, but we do work closely with the governments and administrations across the UK. But in England, we fund or we commission debt advice services, so we're the largest single funder of debt advice in England. We've also got a focus on consumer protection, so we work really closely with the Financial Conduct Authority on that, and in particular around scams. And we do a lot of work supporting people who've in particular been victims of pension scams, where they've effectively lost their pension savings due to scammers. But the other part of our function, and really why I'm here today, is a strategy. We have a strategy for financial wellbeing across the UK. And we recognise very much that there's a lot of work to do. Everyone really's lives are touched by money, so it's not something that we can do on our own. So it's very much about working with a wide range of stakeholders to try to support everybody to be able to improve their financial wellbeing across the UK. And we do that by working with financial services firms. We've got a whole work stream looking at the workplace, so we do a lot of work with employers. But my role in particular is focused on health and social care, which is obviously why I'm here today. And the reason that we think it's so important is, you guys touch so many lives on a daily basis, and you're working with often people who are in quite vulnerable circumstances in relation to their health. But there may well be some monetary issues there, which we're going to cover in today's session as well. So really there's an opportunity for you guys to make such a difference to people's lives, both in terms of their healthcare and support, but also in terms of their financial well-being as well. So that's who we are, what we do, and why we're really keen and happy to be talking to you today. But I don't want this to be just me talking at you for 40 minutes. There is going to be some audience participation. So whether you're dialing in on a computer or on a phone or a tablet, what I'm going to ask you to do in a moment is take part in a poll. So I'm keen to get your thoughts on this question. So if we can move on to the next slide. So in a moment, there's a poll will pop up on your screen and give you the chance to vote and select your answer. Because what I'm keen to know about is how much more or less often are you seeing patients that you're concerned are experiencing health issues which could be caused or exacerbated by money worries. So how much more or less often are you seeing patients that you're concerned are experiencing health issues which could be caused or made worse by money worries? So are you seeing it a lot more than usual, about the same, less than usual, or a lot less than usual? So a lot more, around the same, less, a lot less. We know that there's been particular, money is, and the cost of living has been in the news for quite a few months now. So if we think back over the last few months compared to perhaps the same sort of 6 months last year, and how much more or less often are you seeing patients that you're concerned are experiencing health issues caused or exacerbated by money worries? If you're a computer, I think you can just click the circle that you think is relevant, or I think if you're on a tablet or a mobile phone, you should be able to touch your screen and select the answers there. Okay, so the results are in. Thank you everybody for taking part. So a big chunk of you, 50% have seen it more than usual, and then a further 80, a lot more. So that's 68% have seen an increase, which is obviously concerning. And 32% around the same, which indicates that perhaps you are quite attuned to this issue, or maybe it's that you're working in areas where people might be struggling a bit more with their finances. So that's interesting, thank you. If we can close that down and move on to the next slide, please. Hopefully you can see that okay, but we actually asked the same question to 500 healthcare professionals across a range of roles. So we had nurses, GPs, surgeons, radiologists, other allied health professionals respond. And in that poll, 50% of people had said that they'd seen more patients than usual, that they were having concerns about that their health was being caused or exacerbated by money worries. And that includes those who said selected more than usual and a lot more than usual. So you guys on this call have actually bit over that, so 68% on here. So yeah, that's worrying. That was because this poll was a couple of months ago, so it seems as though that there's a bit of an upward trend. Okay, get your fingers ready again, because I've got another poll for you and another question. This one's a bit longer. So just thinking about perhaps what is a barrier or holding you back from asking patients about money worries. Is there anything? Is it that you perhaps feel it's not your place to ask? Do you have a fear of causing embarrassment or shame? Is it because you don't really know how to appropriately start the conversation? How do you actually bring it up? It feels a bit awkward, doesn't it, talking about money when you're in a healthcare setting? Is it that you worry that you won't have the answers? Is it that you're a bit unsure that if you did ask a question and someone replied, you wouldn't know necessarily what to do with the answer? Is it simply that you don't have enough time? We know that healthcare services are stretched at the moment, so is it just that there's not enough time to have those kind of conversations with patients? Actually, is this question not relevant to you? Do you always ask? You've never held back from asking patients about their money worries? Is it because maybe you don't know where to signpost somebody? So you're not sure of a trusted source of support or guidance or advice, or is it that it never actually crosses your mind to ask somebody about money? So what, if anything, holds you back from asking your patients about money worries? Not your place, embarrassment or shame, don't know how to start the conversation, won't have the answers, not sure what to do with the answers, haven't got enough time. It's not applicable to you. You always ask your patients about money worries. You don't know where to signpost, or it never crosses your mind. So do select what you think. Okay, interesting. So where is the biggest chunk? So big proportion, not sure where to signpost. So we're definitely going to cover that in today's session. Really, really good to see that 35% don't hold back. And I'm going to be coming back to you guys in a moment, because I'm really keen for you to share your experiences and your sort of insights with colleagues on the call. Not surprised that 16% not having enough time. Like I said, it's very stretched in health and care at the moment. Not having the answers and unsure what to do with answers if the patient did respond, coming out quite highly there as well. And again, we're going to cover that in today's session. I'm pleased to say actually that only 3% not sure how to start it, how to start the conversation. And also a lower amount being fearful that it might cause embarrassment or shame, because I think there is still a lot of stigma around money and debt. And sometimes people can feel a bit embarrassed. So I'm glad that that's a bit lower down in the ratings. And also just a few people feeling it's not your place. We're going to cover in a moment some of the links between health and money, which might kind of set the scene really as to why you can have a really positive role to play in terms of asking about money. So if we could close that off, again, we asked the same questions in a poll recently to those same 500 healthcare professionals. So they came out a little bit different, actually. More of them felt it wasn't their place, and more of them felt that it might cause embarrassment or shame. And 10% it not crossing their mind. And I guess you guys have joined up to this session today, so it probably is on your mind that it's an issue. So I'm not totally surprised that some of the responses are a little bit different. So just in terms of trying to set that scene as to why maybe it is within the gift, I guess, or certainly a positive thing to do for a healthcare professional to ask about money. We just move on to the next slide, please. So there's a lot of evidence out there about the links between health problems and money problems. So I know for you guys in the NHS, in particular, there's a big focus at the moment on health inequalities and the fact that people who live in the more deprived areas in particular have worse health outcomes, and that actually people die many years earlier if they live in more deprived areas. And depending on where you are in the UK, the area the indices of deprivation are a little bit different. There are some common themes, but what is common across all 4 nations is living in poverty. And we know that there's about 9.5 million people who are living in poverty across the UK at the moment. So if we know that people are struggling financially, and those same people are probably also having those worse health outcomes. So there's a clear link there in the first instance between money and health. But if we drill down a little bit more into, well, why might that be, or what's actually going on? I think it truly is a vicious cycle. If you are trying to manage on a low income, you've got to make some really difficult decisions about what you spend that money on. And you need to pay for your housing, whether that's rent or mortgage. You need to pay for your fuel, which, as we know, those costs have been going up. You need to perhaps be able to pay to get to work, to make sure that you've still got that income coming in. And so oftentimes what's left over, you're having to make difficult decisions about what you do with it. And sometimes that's difficult decisions about what food you buy. And we know that either malnutrition or obesity issues can sometimes be as a result of having to make those difficult decisions about what you can afford to pay for in terms of food. And also some research by Joseph Rowntree Foundation shows that the more money that you have, the more that you can spend it on things that are promoting positive health. So whether that's gym memberships or engaging in different sort of physical activities, being able to pay for activities that are also good for your mental and social and emotional well-being. If you just don't have the luxury of being able to spend money on that, then it's going to have an impact on your health. We also know from some research that Asthma and Lung the charity did recently, that people with respiratory conditions are finding that they're struggling at the moment because they may be having problems heating their homes. So obviously living in cold or damp conditions can exacerbate respiratory illnesses. And some evidence from Health Watch recently also showed that, and I guess this is more of an England thing, but people are struggling to pay for their prescriptions and either not picking up their prescriptions or they're sort of rationing their medications, which obviously in turn then leads to worsening health problems. There's also big links between money and mental health. And again, sort of living on a low income, struggling, trying to deal with bills, deal with creditors, people that you owe money to, that's extremely stressful. And ongoing stress obviously can lead to mental health problems, but also living with a mental health problem. The symptoms of that can sometimes make managing money more difficult and making decisions about money more difficult, which can in turn lead to money problems. So impulse control, for example, can be quite challenging if someone has bipolar disorder, and that can lead to overspending, and oftentimes people end up in a debt situation. But also health problems can mean that you have to give up work or that you're off work for a period of time. Perhaps you're having to live on a lower income, whether that's statutory sick pay or benefits, which then brings you back round to struggling financially, having to make those difficult decisions, and again, having that impact on health. So there's quite a lot of evidence from different sources about this relationship between both health problems and money problems. And again, it's why we think it's so important for you guys to feel confident asking about money and getting people to the right source of support.
So a financially informed practitioner, certainly from our perspective, has an awareness of how money and health can be linked. So hopefully that's we've ticked that box already today. Also feels confident asking patients if they would like some support about the money issues they may be facing. And I think that was one of the areas that came up in terms of people feeling a bit awkward raising the issue of money. I think also a financially informed practitioner offers to assist a patient in finding the right kind of advice or guidance. And then if someone wants that help, that you also signpost or refer somebody off to a trusted source of support. But I do want to stress what a financially informed practitioner isn't. So if we can move on to the next slide. So we've already said that you guys are extremely busy. You've obviously also done your trainings in the particular clinical area, area of expertise. So what we are not suggesting is that being a financially informed practitioner suddenly means you also have to become a money advisor. That's not what you're trained to do. That's not the primary objective of your role. And as we've seen in the poll, that there's not going to be the time to do that. But on the other side, actually, people who do provide advice on money-related matters are generally regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So there's a lot of scrutiny given to them and the way that they provide that advice. They have to have various trainings. They have to have insurance in case they give the wrong advice. And they have to be appropriately supervised, have their work checked, etc. So we're absolutely not suggesting that being a financially informed practitioner means that you also suddenly have to provide any money advice. And I just want to stress that to make sure everyone feels comfortable sort of with those boundaries, and that it's okay to say, no, I can't help you, and give you any advice on finances, but I can help you get to the right source of support. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. So given that we know that health and money are really closely linked, and that we do know that asking about money is difficult for people, and this is not your bread and butter. Your bread and butter is your clinical trainings. We've been beavering away and working with others on a number of different tools and resources that we hope will be helpful to you to be able to feel a bit more confident asking about money and knowing where to signpost to a trusted source of support. So one of the things that we've been doing is that we've worked with the Personalised Care Institute. So you may or may not have heard of them. They do primarily work in England, but again, their resources are sort of have pan-UK appeal. Their focus is on personalised care, as the name suggests, which is all about working with patients in terms of what matters to them. And we've worked with them because they have some really great training on how to have what matters to you conversation with a patient. So lots of different e-learnings which are free on their website to learn the skills, to learn the techniques, to have those conversations with patients about, well, what is actually going on for you, which might be wider than the clinical symptoms, and start delving in a little bit more to perhaps more social issues that might be going on and impacting on that person's health. So their training in terms of how to have those conversations is on there, but also we've populated it with some training that we've developed specifically on financial well-being and having conversations about financial well-being. And all of the resources that I'm going to talk about today as well are also kind of housed in this Money Talk section on the Personalised Care Institute website as well. So the link is on the slide. As Emma mentioned earlier, you will get the slides after today's session. So please do check out the Money Talk section on the website and use the tools and take part in the e-learning as well. If we move on to the next slide, please. So the other thing that we've worked on is a short e-learning module with the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities. It's part of their All Our Health series. So they've got a number of short e-learning modules on a wide range of topics, including health inequalities, social prescribing, making every contact count, all that sort of good stuff. So we've worked with them to develop a module that sits within that series on financial well-being. So all of these All Our Health modules probably only take about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. So should be able to kind of squeeze them in to a busy day. It's not like you're chained to a computer for a day and a half. And the module is broken into a few different sort of sections. One section sets the scene and gives some of the statistics about the links between money and health. So much like what we've already covered today. The main module really then gives some techniques and some suggestions as to how you can start to have those conversations with patients about money. And there's information there both for frontline healthcare professionals, but also for managers and for strategic leaders as well, in terms of what you might be able to do to support your staff teams to have those conversations. We also include within there some information about looking after your own financial well-being, because again, working in health, you're often very focused on the person that you're caring for, but what about your own needs? So it's the same with money. You might be struggling as well. So there's some information in there about looking after your own financial well-being as well. And the model that we advocate in the learning is a one that you might be familiar with. It's kind of from public health, a public health area really, which is Ask, Assist and Act. And then the third sort of section within the module is some different resources that you might find useful as well. Now, because we worked on this with OHID, it is quite England focused in terms of the statistics and the resources, but that middle bit of the module there, which has the techniques, again, people from across the UK can access that. It's the same techniques no matter where you are in the UK. And we are in conversations actually with the NHS in other nations about whether or not we could develop something similar, which is bespoke to Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Now then, some of you had said that you always ask your patients about money. Expertise again. So for those of you who said that you don't shy away, I'd really love it if you felt comfortable to add in the chat how you broach that conversation. How do you open that conversation up with patients when you're asking them about money? What words do you use? How do you start it? What have you found that works for you? It would be great if you felt comfortable to share that with your colleagues and with me, and give us some hints and tips as to how you go about broaching that conversation with your patients. So a number of you said that you didn't shy away. What do you actually say? How do you have that conversation? So while hopefully some of you are typing, if we could move on to the next slide. So these are some of the suggestions that we've come up with and included in the e-learning that I mentioned. So just simply asking, is it okay if I ask you about money and finances? So that's part of the ask. I think the other way of asking is just to really couch things in current events. So, we know that lots of people are struggling financially at the moment, and that could be impacting on health. Is it okay if I ask you about any money or finance issues you might be having at the moment? And then in terms of the assist, if someone says, well, yeah, okay, you can ask me about it, you could say, well, we've got some helpful information to share if you'd like to hear more. So it's not about forcing some information on somebody, but giving them the option to say no, actually they don't want to talk to you about this. But if someone is keen for you to help them, then you're asking, would you like me to refer or signpost you to, and then a particular service? So I can see that some people have responded in the chat, which is great. Let me have a look. So Jennifer said, in our initial assessments, we ask whether patients receive any disability benefits. This usually starts a conversation to what they receive or whether they have worries or concerns. Great. Donna has said, in our service, we have a questionnaire that asks them if they have any financial concerns. This helps us open the conversation with patients. That's great, Donna, because it normalizes it. If it's something that you're asking everybody, it's not like you're singling anybody out. And I think that's really important, is that it's just to normalize this conversation and just have that awareness that it's part of well-being in the round. Claire says we might ask if someone is in receipt of any benefits. Colette says they ask as part of an assessment on first home visits, but if there's not time, then they can cover it on the next visit. Edwina says, as part of our usual process, we financially assess everyone once a year, and we talk about what help our finance and benefits team can help with, including making sure that people are getting all the benefits to which they are entitled, and they will help with financial issues. Oh, brilliant. It's great that you've got that team and that referral link in. Jasmine says, I am just going to ask a few questions about any situational issues which may be impacting on your mood. Is that okay? And then go on to ask about any financial issues, housing, etc. Perfect. That's a great way in. Lindsay says we use some of the charity's Money Matters leaflets, so Macmillan and Brain Tumour. So using those resources, that collateral as a way in is fantastic. And Amy, who's an OT in old age psychiatry, often referrals relate to cognitive impairment. So a requirement is to ask if they are coping with banking, admin, bills, etc. We are also increasingly getting referrals for older adults experiencing anxiety relating to significant loss of money due to a scam. Oh, interesting. What I haven't included in the pack actually is some information on our scams resources. So I'll certainly follow that up with the team and make sure that we can share some of that with you afterwards, Amy. Initial assessments discuss whether anyone's on sick pay or benefits, and we'll use that to start the conversation about finances. And again, recognising that if someone drops from full pay to statutory sick pay, that's quite a drop, and people have got to be able to then re-budget around that. Charlotte says if a client mentions money, then would ask them to give more information and would signpost at the end of the session along with other information. So it's not something we ask every client due to time constraints, but all conversations around money will be based on individual circumstances. Fantastic. There's quite a few more there, so I'm not going to read them all out just now. I'm conscious I need to move on to the rest of the content. But thank you so much for sharing that, because hearing it from you guys and being able to share it with your colleagues, I think is so important. You're doing it, you've had that experience, and you know what works. So I'm really grateful that you've shared that today. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we've developed, which we also hope might help you have those kind of quite structured conversations, I guess, about money, and also trying to address this issue of, well, if I ask a question about money and a patient answers, how do I know what to do with the answer? So we've developed what we're calling quite imaginatively just a question and signposting tool. Now, it says here mental health, money questions and signposting, and we did develop this as a result of conversations we were having with some mental health teams in the northeast of England, where they had recognised that money was a big issue for their patients. It was probably impacting on their recovery. They already had that awareness, but the clinicians didn't feel confident asking the questions. And it was because often they didn't know either which questions to ask, but also what to do with any answers. So we worked with them on a first version of this tool. It got tested in some mental health services. It was then independently evaluated by a service user-led group. We then refined it, and this is what we've come up with. There is a version for each nation of the UK, because the services and the signposting options are different depending on whether you're in England, Scotland, Northern Ireland or Wales. And we've also got a Welsh language version as well. So although what you can see on the screen is just a screenshot of the English version, there is a version for everyone across the UK. And although it's mental health, when I show you in a moment what some of the questions are, I hope that you'll agree that I think this can be adapted and used in other services as well. And it just tries to give you that structure for having a conversation. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So the tool itself has this sort of format. So there are about 12 questions, I think, which tries to draw out different issues that might be going on for the patient, because depending on the type of money issue they're having would probably influence where you signposted them. So for example, if someone's got a housing issue, housing advice is a little bit different to debt advice. So it sets out the question, and then the patient can obviously say yes or no. If it's no, you can just move on to the next question. If it's yes, then there's some suggested wording, and in the green box, we've populated those green boxes with some national services, tools and resources that you could then signpost or refer a patient to. If we move on to the next slide. So this question, as you can see, this one's about welfare benefits. So some of you have already said that you often use asking about benefits as an in to asking about money. So we've included a question about whether someone needs any help with welfare benefits. And again, the green box, this is for England, has a number of suggestions for different resources. The ones for the different nations in the UK have some slightly different organisations, but the blue column, and where I've put the sort of the red circle, this column can actually be edited. So if you do have a local service, like whoever it was in the chat that mentioned that they have a team that they can refer to, then you can put the details of those local services, organisations, resources in that blue column. So you're building up a nice comprehensive resource for both national and local services that you might be able to signpost or refer a patient to. And on screen is the example of questions about welfare benefits, but we also cover housing, debt, sort of coercive control or scams. If someone's sort of controlling your money, there's information about addictions, gambling, So the questions cover quite a wide range of sort of money related issues, and then provide a range of different national services that you might then be able to refer it into. So they're available to download for free on our website. And again, the link is will come out on the slides. If we can move on to the next slide, please. So if you have asked someone if they have any money issues that they want to talk about, and you've offered to assist them, one of the things that came out in the poll was you might not know where to signpost them to. So using the question and signposting tool, there's a wide range of organisations that you can signpost to, which are quite specific for the different issues that might crop up. But I just wanted to, if you are stuck and you don't know where to signpost to, I just wanted to share a little bit more information about Money Helper, because it is a service that is provided by ourselves at MAPS, which means it's government backed. Basically, it's free, it's impartial. So people aren't charged to use it, and there's no kind of agenda in relation to the guidance that's offered. It's impartial, and it's a trusted source of support, and it really does cover everything from sort of pocket money right through to pensions and everything in between. So it is a service that's available online, but also we do have a helpline as well, which I'll cover in a moment. So if we could just move on to the next slide, please. One of the more popular tools actually that we've got on the website that I wanted to draw attention to is our budget planner. And somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that if someone's income is changing, you know, if they've gone from contractual pay to maybe sick pay, but then statutory sick pay, or moving on to benefits, then that's a big change. And so it's really important, I think, for people to do a budget at that point and look at what they've now got coming in and what their outgoings are going out, and looking to see, you know, does it tally up, does it match? If not, then there's various different actions that they might be able to take to either increase their income or decrease some of their outgoings, or perhaps deal with debts if that's the situation that they're in. But doing the budget is always that sort of first starting point. The budget planner takes you through things step by step. I always forget about sort of my car MOT or whatever, and it's always a surprise when it's due and I've never saved up enough money for it. So the budget planner sort of hand holds you through all the things that you might have to spend over the course of not just a month but also a year. So it's really useful in that respect. If we move on to the next slide, please. Now, some of you, when you signed up, I know had expressed an interest in finding out a bit more about benefits that patients might be entitled to. Now, depending on your role, it might not be appropriate for you to know the ins and outs of the benefit system. It's quite complex, it changes, it's different in different parts of the UK. There are kind of national benefits that people can claim, but there's also stuff that people can access locally depending on the local authority. So I would say, unless it's, you know, something that you're getting regularly trained on, not to kind of venture into trying to give any advice on welfare benefits like we mentioned earlier. I think really it's about sort of having a general awareness of what might be available, but being able to signpost people to where they can get that support and find out what they are actually entitled to. So what we've launched quite recently is a benefits calculator on the Money Helper website, and people can go on there, answer a few questions about their situation, and it will then come up with a whole load of suggestions of different sorts of benefits, but also kind of local support schemes that they might be able to tap into. And this is UK wide as well. Not all the benefits calculators are UK wide. So this has become particularly popular since we launched it just a few months ago. And it's a great place to either signpost a client, or if you're working, you know, more closely with them, you know, actually going through it with them and sort of answering some of the questions with them and finding out what they might be entitled to. Move on to the next slide, please. And there's just absolutely masses of information on there, and there's a whole section on cost of living, because that's obviously front and centre of everyone's minds at the moment. If someone's struggling to pay bills, there's information there. There's information for people who are self-employed. There's information on how They can talk to their creditors if they're needing to, you know, if actually they're going to miss a payment, they're worried about that. It's always better to tell a creditor rather than just sort of miss payments and fall into debt, but that can be quite scary. So there's a lot of information on how to talk to creditors, and there's the benefit calculator that I mentioned as well. If we could move on to the next slide, please. So I'm not going to read this all out, but this is more just for you guys to have when you get the slide deck. But in terms of money guidance, people can contact us over the phone. It's free. They can chat to us on WhatsApp, and they can also web chat and email as well. But if they're needing pensions advice, so some of you mentioned older adults, pensions advice, pensions guidance, sorry, is a slightly different team. So if we move on to the next slide, I've also included their contact details as well. So it's a little bit of a different phone number. Slightly different opening hours, and that's because it goes through to a different team, because pensions are quite complicated, and it's a specialist team that's able to provide the money guidance there. And if we move on to the next and what I think is the final slide, so also some resources that I was keen to let you know about. As you guys work in the public sector, we have a number of guides where you can order them and get some printed guides delivered to your sort of workplace, which can then be given out to your patients. So there are a number of them available. They're totally free for you guys, as I said, working in the public sector. What I've taken a screenshot of there is a guide that we have on help with the cost of living. So again, that's one of our most popular one at the moment, but there are some other guides on there which may or may not be relevant depending on kind of the area of work that you're or the patients sort of that you're working with. But please do use that link and order any free guides to be delivered so that they can be given out to patients. And we've also got a poster which you can download and put up in relevant service user areas. So there's the phone number on there, there's the website, there's also a QR code which gets people straight through to the Money Helper website. So different ways of kind of promoting that service there and flagging it to patients that it's free, it's impartial, it's a trusted source of support. And if you're not sure where to signpost someone, or if you don't have those kind of local referral relationships, Money Helper is always a good place to signpost somebody to if they are struggling financially. So I think if we move on to the last slide, that's the last one from me. So thank you very much for listening, and also thanks so much for contributing. I'm really grateful, as I said, to all of those suggestions and hints and tips about how to have the conversations. But I think that's the end of the main presentation from me. And I'll invite Vanessa back on screen, who I think is going to coordinate any of the question and answers.
Yes, thank you. That was really interesting. I love all your webinars, but that was very interesting. Thank you very much. I was making notes for hopefully the future of us working together. I don't have an awful lot going on in the Q&A box. If anyone would like to post some questions, I think it was really wonderful to hear these individual service experiences of how they're already having these financial conversations. So wondering if there's anything that you'd like to add, if there's any way that we could perhaps further some of these initiatives that people are already taking.
I mean, it was brilliant to see the range. I think it seems that asking about benefits is kind of often the way in. And I guess the question and signposting tool will hopefully, if people are using that as a way in, also then give some other questions to draw out some other issues that might be, because benefits is obviously often a key thing for someone who's perhaps they're having to be off work or they're now living with a health condition. So they're going to have additional costs, which could be covered by the benefit system. But, you know, is there some other stuff that's going on for them that you don't know about? Is it a housing issue? Is it is there a gambling issue? Other sort of addiction issues? So I think, yeah, perhaps tapping into the question and signposting tool to explore wider financial issues could be an opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's really interesting to hear about conversations about benefits. It's obviously hot, you know, that's hot water, and there's lots of things that are involved in the benefit system that practitioners might not necessarily know an awful lot about. what I think might be interesting is how can practitioners build in time to have conversations about money where it might not necessarily be an obvious connection. Sometimes it feels more obvious than others. Would your suggestion be that hopefully we can have conversations with all patients at every point?
I mean, that would be the utopia, wouldn't it? And like I said earlier, sort of just normalizing it. And it's part of gathering that sort of wider information about a patient in terms of their whole situation, which could be impacting on their health and therefore how you work with them. But I think we also have to be realists, and there is a lot of pressure on services at the moment, and so it may not be that it's feasible to ask in every single session. But if we can start to ask more and more and more often than not, perhaps, then that would be fantastic, because there's just so much evidence about the links between health and money, and if we can get people perhaps increasing their incomes, dealing with their debts, improving their housing situation, then is that also going to have a positive impact on those health outcomes as well? And I think that's what we're all keen to see.
Yeah, that would be brilliant, wouldn't it? You've had some lovely feedback pop up in the chat box about how helpful your resources are, and actually I think that that's really worth diving into a bit further. Your website is remarkable. The depth is enormous. So I do encourage all attendees to spend maybe a couple of minutes just navigating through the website, because there are so many useful tools there. Suzanne's asked if you could give a quick summary of the benefits available.
Well, I'm not a welfare benefits expert anymore. I did used to be a welfare benefits advisor some time ago, so I would hate to give any incorrect advice. But I mean, in the main, there are benefits which people can get because they're out of work. They're often means tested, although some of them can be based on contributions. So you're looking at things like universal credit, which can be paid if someone is not well enough to work, or employment and support allowance or job seeker allowance would be other benefits. And they're there to try to replace income that is lost, that you're not getting because of working anymore. If someone is living with a health condition, then there's personal independence payment, or PIP, which can be claimed to, and someone can be working and still be entitled to PIP. And that's more about acknowledging that living with a health condition or disability costs more, and therefore you need that extra financial support. And they've just brought in a new benefit in Scotland, which is adult disability payment, which is going to be replacing PIP. So it's a complicated landscape. I would say those are the two sort of main benefits in terms of health related issues. But as I said, it's such a complicated and ever changing landscape. And there's often quirky benefits, things like carers allowance, which has got some sort of quirky-ish rules, industrial injuries benefit. There's, depending on sort of which patients you're working with, there might be a range of different things they're entitled to. So I think, again, have a look on the website, they're all covered there. But it's really about referring to a welfare benefits specialist to make sure that someone's getting the right benefits, because some of them have strange rules where you can claim one thing but then it would impact on another thing. So it's really important that it's a welfare benefits or welfare rights advisor is involved to make sure that someone isn't doing something that will be detrimental to them at the end of the day.
That's it. Thank you so much, Sarah. Suzanne asked if you have small contact cards with the numbers in the website contacts.
We do. We have, we call them Z cards. So yeah, they're sort of little credit card size things, which then fold out into longer, and they are available. What I would say there is I'll pop the email address in the chat, but if you are keen to have some of those sent to you, you can email partners@maps.org.uk, and our partnerships team can make sure that they can get that collateral to you. So I'll pop the email address in the chat.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. So that's everything from us. Thank you again so much, Sarah, for your time today. It's been a brilliant webinar, and I hope that everyone has a really pleasant afternoon. I hope to see you again soon.